All right, hello everyone. I think we're going to get started. I think if a couple other people join in later, that'll be fine. My name's Mike Dorn. Good afternoon to the folks on the East Coast. I think we have some folks from the West Coast on the line as well. So good afternoon. I'm excited for today's session. We're going to be going through the strategies of opening up a specialty pharmacy. And I wanted to let you guys know I'm even more excited that we have some of All Care Plus's executive team with me on the phone today. We have Dan Apellian, President and CEO, Mark Janian, Chief Commercial Officer, and Aaron Leighton, Executive Director of Operations and Chief Compliance Officer. So for today's agenda, I'm thinking this session is going to be just about 40 minutes long. We'll open it up for questions at the end. If you do have any, feel free to type them into the chat box there. Everyone's muted here today, so we can keep it quiet on the line. But what we'll be doing first is I'll be giving you an overview of who All Care Plus is, what we do, why it's important to today's webinar, and for the topic of strategies for opening a hospital-owned specialty pharmacy. We're then going to get into the meat and potatoes. I've got the executive team here. We're going to be talking about their experiences opening, building, and managing specialty pharmacies. And we'll be discussing everything from, what's the role of a specialty pharmacy and what defines specialty drug, because I think there is some confusion out there. Things to consider when building out and licensing the pharmacy. We're going to take a look at technology considerations and the importance of reporting, also accreditations and how the reporting ties into that. We're going to look at a staffing strategy, and then we're also going to look at access. Access is a big thing, and we're going to look at access to not only limited distribution drugs, but also the payers. The goal of today's session is really to review the key areas within the specialty pharmacy and discuss the different strategies to ensure a successful project. So that said, let me pass it over to Dan, Aaron, and Mark. They'll do a quick introduction of themselves, and then we can get into who is All Care Plus. Dan?
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to our West Coasters. So first off, I want to wish you all a Happy New Year, and I thank you for getting on the phone today to join the meeting. So my name's Dan Apellian. I'm a pharmacist by trade. I've been in the specialty pharmacy space for the past 15 years, pretty much my whole career. The past 12 have been in a management and ownership role. We've had the opportunity to build out about 8 specialty pharmacies, most of which have been owned by our parent company, All Care Plus, some of which have been for our partners as well. I think from a kind of a big picture standpoint, what this year brings for us is some exciting times and changes in the healthcare space, particularly for specialty pharmacy, as we're starting to see a shift from traditional reimbursement models, and we'll talk more about that. But nevertheless, I want to thank you guys for joining the group. Aaron?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon as well. Thank you so much for joining this webinar, folks. I'm really looking forward to it. My name is Aaron Leighton. I'm the Executive Director of Operations and Corporate Compliance Officer at All Care Plus Pharmacy. I've spent the vast majority of my career since I've graduated school, actually, in the specialty pharmacy space. So I bring a lot of experience in the areas of management of pharmacy, operations, compliance, accreditations, payer access, LD access. So I'm really looking forward to our chat today. Thank you. Mark?
Thanks, Aaron, and good afternoon, everybody on the phone. My name is Mark Janian. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at All Care Plus Specialty Pharmacy. I've spent the last 20 years of my career in the specialty space, both on the manufacturer side, healthcare, IT side, as well as in the specialty pharmacy space specifically. My responsibilities here, and we'll be talking today a little bit about payer access as well as limited distribution access as a specialty pharmacy.
Thanks, Mark. And as I mentioned before, my name is Mike Dorn. I'm the Regional Vice President on the health systems side of the house. I come from a healthcare background, and most recently I spent some time in the 340B space. So my role here at All Care Plus is to work with the 340B eligible health hospitals that are interested in opening up their own specialty pharmacy. So let me start by telling you a little bit about who All Care Plus is. So we're a company comprised of 3 different divisions, but we all have one goal towards specialty pharmacy. The first division, and if we look right in the middle here, that's the first one we started with, All Care Plus Pharmacy. Over on the left-hand side, we expanded out and created a second division, which is called All Care Access Services. And that has to deal with manufacturer reimbursement services, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And the third one over on the right-hand side is All Care Hospital Solutions. That's the division that helps hospitals build, open, and manage specialty pharmacies. And it's really the expertise in all 3 of these areas that enable us to provide a uniquely comprehensive solution to our partners that are looking to open up a specialty pharmacy, whether they're just thinking about doing it now, whether they've started it and need some help along the way, or they have built one out and just want to get and become a state-of-the-art specialty pharmacy. So I'll give you a little company overview so you guys know who we are. About 11 years ago, Dan opened the doors to our first pharmacy in Worcester, Mass. This pharmacy was actually located within the lobby of AIDS Project Worcester. For those of you who aren't aware, AIDS Project Worcester is the largest AIDS service organization in the Northeast. So that was our first location there. As the company grew, as the geography of the patients that we were servicing, and then also as the disease states expanded, we made the conscious decision to open up a very traditional mail-order specialty pharmacy, and that's located in Northborough, Mass. That's where our headquarters is today. We fill approximately 60,000 square feet of space for that pharmacy. We're nationally licensed. We're working with patients in all 50 states. We hold national payer contracts with Cigna, Aetna, United, Prime, local Blue Cross and Blue Shields, and we currently hold 3 specialty pharmacy accreditations. You know, the point I'm trying to make here is that unlike many of the other consulting firms that are out there and working with health systems that want to open a specialty pharmacy, we really have the expertise and experience doing this. You know, sending prescriptions nationally throughout the U.S. We've gone through the RFPs to get access to the limited distribution medications. We have relationships with the payers, and we have access to the payers that I mentioned before. And we have the 3 big accreditations that make us a state-of-the-art specialty pharmacy. So those accreditations that I just mentioned, it's URAC, JCO, and ACHC. This is really important. The days of just having URAC and having 1 accreditation are long gone. We're seeing that the payers are mandating 2, and it's trending towards 3. So when we're setting up our health system partners, the whole architecture, the build out, the technology, the workflow, the policies and procedures, all that work that goes into building out these pharmacies, we take that into consideration so we can lay the groundwork to eventually reach all 3 of those accreditations as the end goal. So I talked a little bit about the pharmacy itself, the first pharmacy we built out, the specialty pharmacy. I talked a little bit about the health systems division, which is the one helping hospitals like yourselves that are potentially looking to open up a specialty pharmacy. I thought it would make sense to talk a little bit about our hub services side of the house, the side of the house that helps with reimbursement services. The reason I'm doing that is because it ties very nicely to what you guys are hoping to be doing with building out a specialty pharmacy. For those of you who aren't familiar, hub services, they can also be called manufacturer support services. I'll give you a quick example of how they work. So if you can imagine a patient's going into the clinic, they're then asked to fill out these patient referral forms. And essentially those are forms that are giving them access to the particular medications that they need. Those forms are then sent to a hub, and that's what we're acting as for a lot of the manufacturers in this space. We're processing those forms for the patient, but we're doing a lot more. We're doing a lot of the services that the specialty pharmacies are also doing. We're helping out with prior authorizations, copay assistance, benefits investigations. We're putting in place getting patients enrolled in PAP programs for underinsured patients. Those are all 501c3 funding. And we're even helping out with patient counseling, injection training, things like that. And again, the relevance of this as it relates to opening a specialty pharmacy is that, again, we have this expertise, we have this experience running the hubs, processing the patients, and these are all the health services that the health system should have to offer for its specialty pharmacy program. So now let's bring the executive team into the discussion. We'll get to the meat and potatoes of this, and I want to start by asking a couple questions to Dan, Aaron, and Mark. And Dan, I'll start with you. We hear often, and I mentioned this before, that specialty, pharmacy executives and hospital leaderships many times say, my understanding of a specialty is very surface level. Can you guys start out by, explaining what that is and what is a specialty drug?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. So I think first off, it's important to get an understanding of what a specialty drug is. There's no kind of clear-cut black and white definition of, I'll just pull it right out of the dictionary, this is a specialty drug. And the reason being is because the definition continues to evolve as the pipeline advances and continues. But the best way to describe these products, these medicines, are defining them by their attributes. And these attributes can be just one or many, and there'll be a common theme in place that I'll talk about as well. But let me go through and list some of the common attributes that you'll see for specialty medications. Oftentimes, these medications are prescribed for patients that are living with complex or chronic medical conditions. Some of them could be fatal, some of them not. Some of them are debilitating, and some of them we can treat or cure. Other times, these medications are used to treat rare or orphan diseases. We'll often see that most of these medications are requiring some additional patient education, some sort of adherence support and programs. And this goes above and beyond just offering a auto refill that you can get at a retail pharmacy. The dosage forms of these medications are across the board. We see it all from orals to injectables, inhalable products, infused products. So it runs the gamut. Oftentimes we'll see that they require some sort of unique storage, which will then entail some sort of unique shipping. So i.e. cold chain or a super cold chain. And there's even products that require specific lighting requirements. So storage, shipping, those types of requirements are very frequent in the specialty pharmacy space. And I think another difference for these medications ultimately is they're not stocked at a majority of retail pharmacies. And this comes down to the cost. So as I listed all those attributes, what you will see one common denominator in all of them is really the cost. And what we see is that the payers are defining these products. I've seen various figures out there, an annual average of $15,000. But from a aggregate level, what we see is the impact for a payer to be about $3,000 a month for a specialty pharmacy product. Now that is that's on the cheaper side, to be honest with you. A lot of the therapies for, let's say MS, for instance, can range between $6,000 to $8,000 a month. Hep C, we all know about the big boom in the sticker shocks. We see some products are $30,000, some are $20,000, and then in the orphan and ultra orphan space, its products can be $500,000 up to $1 million. So at the end of the day, when we talk about all these attributes, the one common denominator is price, and these medications will require some sort of special handling and administration.
Dan, no, I appreciate that that overview there. And I think just to start from the ground level, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the timeline for the build out of a specialty pharmacy. A lot of times we have these conversations and people ask, well, it sounds like a complex process. What's the timeline from start to finish when you're building out a pharmacy?
Absolutely. I think, it's now that we know what a specialty medicine is, I think we should just take a little time and talk about what a specialty pharmacy is and what a specialty pharmacy does and why it even came about. So specialty pharmacies really were established as a direct response to the industry's needs to better store and dispense these specialty medicines that we just talked about. The services that we see offered by specialty pharmacies are ultimately around managing complex medications for patients. Oftentimes you'll hear terms such as high touch or white glove, but it's really services that go above and beyond the scope of a traditional retail pharmacy. And so when you look at the channel of access, and what I mean by that is the third-party payers that are paying for these drugs and the drug manufacturers, you'll see one common theme where both parties have a responsibility either to the patient or to their customer. So the manufacturers have responsibilities to their patients, the payers have responsibilities to their customers to make sure that these medications are being handled in a specific way. And that's where specialty pharmacy really came about. We've seen a robust pipeline of specialty drugs coming out. Excitingly enough, we're starting to see therapies that are curing patients that have blindness. It's one of the products that we handle here from a back-end standpoint. So it's an exciting time, but it does require a specific skill set to handle what is required to manage these patients. And when we talk about that, it's not just managing the patient. The specialty pharmacy sits in the middle of not only the patient, but also the provider, but also the manufacturer and also the payer, and everybody wants and needs something in order for it to work. And a lot of that has to do with data and technology, as well as the clinical expertise to truly manage and become a successful pharmacy. We were one of the largest independents in the country, and over the past few years, we've started focusing outside of just dispensing medications, really working on health systems, because we're seeing this whole evolution in healthcare, and it's really exciting. And we'll talk a little bit later on about value-based contracting and some of the changes that are happening. But to answer your question, Mike, about how long it takes to open up a specialty pharmacy for a health system, there's a number of scenarios that we come across that health systems take into consideration. Oftentimes we'll hear that a health system will have a retail pharmacy and they'd like to retrofit that or use that facility to dispense specialty pharmacy products. Depending on the size of the institution and the amount of volume, we can accommodate those needs. Those will get up and running a little bit quicker. You can start dispensing specialty pharmacy drugs through a facility like that has a retail pharmacy license already within a short period of time. I would say maybe 2 months. Now, there's other health systems that we work with that are in major metropolitan areas that say, we don't have the space to offer a specialty pharmacy program here at the hospital. We need to bring it offsite and build out something from scratch. In those instances, I would say from when we get engaged, we can expect to have a fully licensed functional pharmacy ready to bill and adjudicate claims within 6 months. Typically, a pharmacy build out would take 2 to 3 months, and then we give ourselves 3 months to go through the licensing and also get the insurance contracts needed so the institution can start realizing revenue.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Mark, Dan mentioned technology when he described the build out and timeline. Can you talk a little bit about the technology that's needed within the specialty pharmacy and the importance of that when it comes to reporting and accreditations?
Yeah, absolutely. So technology in the specialty pharmacy industry continues to evolve and become more and more important on multiple levels. So we at AllCare look at technology in 3 segments. Those segments are pharmacy dispensing software, a CRM or a patient management platform, and then thirdly, the middleware for integrations with your EMR and other health system tech platforms. So let's take a look a little bit deeper into those 3 segments, if you will. So the first one being a pharmacy dispensing software. There's a number of out-of-the-box solutions that will suffice. We look at the dispensing software or the point of adjudication as no more than a cash register where you're able to bill and collect money from the payer or cash payment from a patient. The nuts and bolts of that dispensing software, besides adjudicating a claim, would be the dispense data that's coming out of it. So as long as the pharmacy is able to gather certain data elements from that dispensing software, which again, most out-of-the-box dispensing softwares will accommodate, we're agnostic as with regards to dispensing softwares. The second, probably largest item in the bucket list for technology is the CRM system. Most important technology arm, I think, of any specialty pharmacy as it relates to the workflow and the systems is, in fact, the CRM system. There are some out-of-the-box systems. There are some customizations that will always be needed, even for out-of-the-box systems. And then there are just pure play custom builds that we involve ourselves in with our clients in order to maximize the software potential of the system itself. So that CRM system has to be a dynamic and flexible system with a user interface that's customizable and really meets the needs of both the organization, the institution, and the patients and providers that you're working with. Things to take into account with those CRMs is the detailed data aggregation and data reporting that needs to come out of it. The data that you're looking for coming out of that CRM solution, both for manufacturers with open access and limited distribution drugs, as well as your payers for your payer contracting, are completely different. Some manufacturer requests data points on a daily basis every single night. Some are weekly, some are monthly, some are quarterly. And the same goes for your payer contracts. And there are some pretty hefty fines associated with incorrect reporting or non-reporting. So that is vitally important, coupled with accreditations, which Aaron will talk about here in a moment. And the third piece that we look at really is the middleware that's out on the marketplace to integrate with your EMRs. Increasingly important to facilitate faster operational turnaround times. Those integrations allow the pharmacy access to important patient information and documentation for prior authorizations, as well as potential drug-to-drug interactions and medical history for patients. As Dan had mentioned, we're seeing a shift in the way that payers are responding and paying for care to value-based contracting. So this EMR integration with your specialty pharmacy components is very important as you continue to see payers such as Humana has rolled out a number of value-based contracting this year in 2019 with institutions specifically, with an attempt obviously to improve the quality and care and coordination of care for their members. The payers' contracts with these institutions are now based upon these quality improvement scores, patient safety and outcomes, and they become even more important for hospitals to consider the holistic view of that patient, including their specialty therapies and the dispensing of the specialty therapies. So with that, let me turn it over to Aaron to talk a little bit about the technology with regards to your accreditations and the importance.
And I think before Aaron starts, I just want to, hi guys, this is Dan. I saw a couple questions come through in terms of what is a CRM system and the importance that it plays. And I think, we'll apologize because we're so ingrained in this space. I think we use acronyms like they're everybody's supposed to know them. So let me take a stab at explaining what a CRM system is. When you talk about specialty pharmacy and you talk about software in general, there's the two basic needs. One is to build a claim, and then the other one is really to manage the workflow. And what you'll notice is there's no two specialty pharmacies will work the same, depending if you're an academic medical center, a smaller health system, a privately owned independent specialty pharmacy. Everyone's going to have their own method to their madness of once a prescription comes into the pharmacy, how are we going to provide the services necessary to get that prescription out the door? And that's where the CRM system comes in. It's a digital workflow software solution that we recommend having integrated into your dispensing system. So you type into your dispensing system, it auto-populates into your patient management system. This eliminates dual data entry. It increases data integrity, maximizes efficiency. But then you need that CRM system to be flexible and customizable to accommodate the needs of your institution or your specialty pharmacy. The acronym CRM stands for Customer Relations Manager. It's your customer is your patient, but it's not only your patient. It's going to be your accreditations, as Aaron will talk about. It's the manufacturers, it's the payer, and then having a system that could provide payer portals and patient access portals so they could see what's going on and eliminate unnecessary phone calls is always a benefit. And it's something that we've offered here for a number of years. So from there, I'll hand it over to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Dan and Mark. Yeah, I'll start off by saying that technology plays a big role. There's no doubt about it. And I think just to take a step back and talk about accreditations, I know they're commonly discussed. Uh, Accreditations like URAC, ACHC, and Joint Commission, they all have their various different genesis backgrounds. So the Joint Commission came from patient safety in a hospital setting, URAC more from a payer and access angle, and ACHC came more about from patient management of an angle. But they all bring forth a set of standards that the pharmacy operation will have to understand the meaning of and comply with in order for it to become accredited. Those standards will be implemented into your pharmacy's operations in various different aspects and really are dictated more formally in your policies and procedures that you will have to create. So when I say implemented in your operations, you know, a lot of you may be thinking patients only. Yeah, patient management is a huge aspect of accreditation, but it is far from the whole picture of what it does. So these standards will touch various different aspects, like I said, like your human resources practices, your training and quality programs, your staff's ability to have that real life fingertip access to that needed information in order for them to perform at this level that's not expected of them. This is all driven by technology, and I can spend hours and hours and hours talking about this segment alone because there's thousands of pages in various different accreditation standards that explain what this really looks like. But from a higher level, it's important to remember this administrative and access aspect of it that's also driven by technology. Now, as for your pharmacy's actual patient management CRM or pharmacy information system, whichever way you want to call it, you'll also need a system that's very robust, customizable, and flexible. And flexible enough to capture the required data, which is constantly evolving, keep that in mind. So accreditations come up with new iterations every so often. They have leading indicators, which are requirements. And then they have other ones that they call exploratory, or things that they're actually looking to move into requirements. All that means is it's constantly evolving, and you have to have that ability to be flexible and nimble. And so not only are you capturing that data, but you're also helping to demonstrate to a reviewer or an auditor from an accreditation body that you are able to understand and interpret the standard that is behind that data point, and really trend information by tapping into your various resources, such as your quality committees, your clinical committees, and produce meaningful action plans and information that is conducive to your patients. Hope that makes sense, but it's really all driving towards that patient care from various different angles is the idea behind it. It's also important to remember that technology systems have to have safeguards that ensure your data is interoperable and consistent. This is actually a big pitfall for a lot of different new companies or pharmacies that are in the space of accreditation. What that means, for example, is if you are creating a plan of care for that patient and you're utilizing various different elements like allergies, monitoring tools, so on and so forth, is that data interoperable with your pharmacy systems that everybody utilizes for the care of that patient? And B, are you able to consistently maintain the integrity of that information as you're progressing the plan of care of that patient throughout their journey with you? So those are some examples that are important to think about and are required. Another thing is that URAC will, for instance, require annual reporting of mandatory measures. And that's done through a third-party validator that they being URAC, has validated themselves first. So your system will really have to have the ability to provide source code and proof that the data has integrity as it's supposed to. Now, I want to take another step back here and say that with all the standards and system requirements, it's easy to get hyper-focused inwards in the technicalities of accreditations and all these things we just talked about. But not only but accreditation reviewers will also urge you to remember that there is a patient at the other end of this all. The accreditation standards bring a lot of value and framework to your operations. And if you're clinicians or healthcare providers on the phone or pharmacists, I mean, you're in this profession for a reason, and that's patient care. So if you kind of think about it from that angle and really look at the higher picture or the bigger picture, it ties in really nicely. These accreditations provide you the tools and the resources and the structure necessary to really have a great pharmacy operation that you can be proud of as a specialty pharmacy, but also the institution can be proud of providing to their patients. And that really ties into all the other aspects of reporting and data generated from your systems and outcomes and value-based medicine that Dan just mentioned, so on and so forth. So having that said, I'll stop here and turn it back to Mike.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you. I guess, Mark, taking it a step further, reporting and maintaining levels of service are imperative to gaining and keeping access to limited distribution medications. With your experience working with the manufacturers, can you describe what is needed to gain access to certain limited distribution drugs?
Yeah, for sure, Mike. So manufacturer relationships are vital to the success of any hospital-based specialty pharmacy. Unlike a traditional retail dispensing pharmacy, specialty dispensing, whether it's a limited distribution drug, and we'll talk about what that means here in a moment, or open access, provide a unique set of barriers that most pharmacists and pharmacy staff are not accustomed to dealing with. So limited distribution drugs, or LDD as they're commonly referred to, is a distribution strategy that's typically based upon a product characteristic, patient education that needs to happen, or administration and or dispensing characteristics of a specific therapy. The LDD model allows a manufacturer to control their distribution, how they distribute drugs, whether it's through the wholesalers or direct buy, and the better influencing of patient services to easily work with products that have restrictions via their FDA-approved indication. One example would be a REMS protocol, potentially where physicians would have to be licensed and trained before they're able to write for a specific medication that might have toxicity, especially in the oncology space. We see that quite a bit. Often multiple accreditations are needed, just like in payer contracts, as well as the ability to report data points of up to 200 unique fields on a daily basis are required for access to limited distribution networks. Again, back to the technology aspect, your system needs to be flexible enough and dynamic enough to respond to the different needs of each manufacturer that you're dealing with in their specific medication itself. Each limited distribution drug often requires different data points, even if they're in the same therapeutic class. So you may have 3 or 4 different MS medications, for example, and different reporting requirements for those specific manufacturers. Whether it's open access via a wholesaler or your GPO or a limited distribution drug, the ability and the know-how of working with the manufacturers, specific hubs or internal service organizations are also imperative to be able to process that patient referral and gain the ability to access support services that are ultimately free to the patient in the hospital, such as copay assistance or injection training with registered nurses. Again, all free of care, but the ability to work and how you work with those and how you integrate them into your operational workflow is imperative, because without those, there's a number of services that would really go without for your patients. All Care has been successful in obtaining close to 85 out of the top 100 limited distribution drugs available on the market in about less than 6 months to most of our clients. Again, that is also based upon some accreditations and things that are also needed for specific manufacturers.
Mark, awesome. You're getting called to the table again, though. Topic of access. What does it take to gain access to the payers?
Yeah, so the payer access is a little bit more dynamic, a little bit different than manufacturer access. Payer access is unique per plan and also per state. There are often times that a payer will grant access to an institution based upon the current hospital contracts and contacts with those payers internally. But oftentimes it means multiple accreditations. As you mentioned before, Mike, 1 accreditation is not enough. 2 accreditations is the norm now, and we are seeing 3 accreditations as a priority for even receiving an RFP. Those RFPs are rather lengthy. On average, they are between 3 and 5 months to fill them out and process them and send them back to the payer. We have a streamlined process here, which drastically reduces the amount of time, but most RFPs range between 500 and 1,000 pages of information once they're done. The 2019 and 2020 pipeline indicates over 65% of the NDAs that have been filed for new drug applications are for specialty therapies, with a high concentration this year in the oncology marketplace. If you look historically, most of the oncology portfolio products are indeed limited distribution products. So those things, coupled with the payer access to those limited distribution drugs, are vitally important because those payers want to see that you have access for their members to those limited distribution drugs. So both limited distribution and drugs, as well as payer access, kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And Dan, I'll pass it over to you for one last question. And this is a question that audience, if you do have questions afterwards, please feel free to put those in the chat box. If we don't get to them today, I will follow up via email. But this last question for you, Dan, is what differentiates All-Care Plus and our hospital solutions from the other consulting firms out there?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. So, I think I'll start with what we should all share in common, right? And so when you're looking at a vendor or a potential accelerator company, it comes in various shapes and sizes, but the proof's in the pudding, and we need to be able to prove to our clients and customers that we have the skill set and expertise to do this. Two main differentiators come to mind when I look at some of the competition and others in this industry that are offering similar services. It's really our intimate knowledge of this space. We have built, managed, and owned over half a dozen specialty pharmacies over the past decade. Our corporate headquarters in Northborough, Massachusetts, which I welcome anybody in the audience to come and attend and visit our facility at any time, as Mike mentioned, is approximately 60,000 square feet, dispensing approximately 250,000 specialty medications on an annual basis. The services provided are above the norm or above the par because as an independent, we stake our success on service and service only. Unlike a payer, I can't mandate patients to utilize my pharmacy. We have to go out there and earn it. So that's one differentiator when I look at some of the others in the space. The second one is a very unique service offering or a solution in where, as Mike mentioned before, we are a nationally licensed specialty pharmacy that has, aside from the accreditations, payer access, which encompass Express Scripts, United, Optum, Cigna, Aetna, some local Blues plans here in the New England area, as well as some of the Prime plans. And so what does this mean to our potential customers? When we engage with an institution, we automatically get a head start, which others are not able to offer. And what I mean by that is we will put strategies in place to help start educating the patients in the clinics that we will target. And those patients can start utilizing the pharmacy services here at All-Care Plus. One case study that we have with a large academic medical center was essentially the day they opened in month one, the institution was profitable. And we were able to do that by starting to service their patients while the institution was looking for a facility, looking to build out a specialty pharmacy. And when they got up and going, we worked with the patients and the providers to transfer the patients back. Now, obviously, we all know patients have the right to choose whichever pharmacy they want to choose. We can never force them to go anywhere. But our experience shows us that providers are confident in recommending the specialty pharmacy services their institution is offering, if that offering is really bettering the patient. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. So when we look into kind of what's going on in the landscape, if you're an institution and you're thinking about opening up a specialty pharmacy, you say, man, I might be a year out before this thing is up and going and before we're able to start realizing revenue. That is not true, and it's not true with our solution. We can, happy to take questions and emails and set up phone calls afterwards to talk a little bit more in detail in terms of what that looks like. But thank you all for attending today. Mike, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Mark, for joining today. Please type in any additional questions that you have, and we'll be sure to answer those for you. I'll actually put up on my next slide here my contact information, so feel free to email me directly or give me a call, michael.dorn@rxallcare.com. So thanks again for joining us. I'll leave this screen up here for any additional questions. Thanks.